think you can probably hear my birds out here talking. We're going to make a seafood gumbo today out here on the back patio, small patio, using the hot plate again. Go along with that, using a heavy Dutch oven for this. And first things first is I want to get some oil started in here, and then we're going to fry up, or not fry up, but saute what is called the trinity. Trinity is basically onion, bell pepper, and celery. Once that's almost complete, we're going to put in a whole head of minced garlic. Then we'll add in our seafood stock that is homemade and throw in some bay leaves. Call it good. What we got going on here is what a lot of people refer to as the Holy Trinity. Like I said earlier, it's a combination of onion, celery, and green bell pepper. You can use green, you can use red. Either bell pepper is fine. Green's the traditional. For this cook here, I'm using a white onion. Again, that's the traditional way to go about it. Gonna let this go down until pretty much everything is translucent, and then be back to add some juice and some other goodies. Alright, the onions are starting to get a little translucent. I don't want it completely sweated down. Just want a little translucency in there. Now we're going to add in our garlic. This is a whole head of garlic that I minced up. The reason I wait until the last, or until the other veggies are almost completely sweated down, is garlic has a tendency to scorch, and nobody really likes scorched garlic. So we're going to let that garlic get in there for a bit, develop a little bit of flavor. Once that flavor develops down, we're going to add in our homemade seafood stock. The way we make our seafood stock is something we do each time we make either gumbo or whenever we make, say, a seafood feast at home where we're going to have crab and shrimp or maybe some lobster or something like that. We'll save all those parts and pieces, all of the shells, all the little trimmings and such. Drop those over into a pot, and then we'll let it, bring it to a boil, and we'll let it simmer for a while until we get some really good, rich stock out of it. And let that water, like I said, simmer. It's not going to boil off, but it's going to evaporate off. And once it evaporates down, you'll be left with a really nice, flavorful stock. It's going to go a long way. Fixing to add this into it. It's going to shock this a little bit because it was frozen. I put it in the refrigerator last night, but there's still a little bit of ice in there. I don't want that ice to come plopping out. We're going to put that in. Going to let this come up to a simmer, and once this comes to a simmer, I'm going to add the roux that I spent 45 minutes making earlier today. We'll be back. It's starting to get a little bit of a simmer here, and we're going to stir in the roux. I started this roux at 10 o'clock this morning, and it took until about 10:45 or so for it to get to this point here. So we're going to add a little and stir it in, add a little and stir it in. What this roux is going to do is going to give it, of course, a definite flavor that is very familiar with gumbo. You'll know what I'm talking about. Also help thicken it up a little bit because this is made with equal parts of flour and some form of fat. For this one I used bacon fat to make this. Have to do it really slow. The reason it took 45 minutes for me to do it is I did this on medium-low, and as you can see, it's thickening up quite nicely there. I'm going to add some water to this before it gets too thick. Make sure I've got the lumps out of it. One thing you'll learn, you see I'm pouring out of a pitcher. One thing you'll learn cooking outside is if you don't cover it up, the little critters in the neighborhood will come in and find what you're cooking, and they'll get into it. Usually not too much of a problem if you got a nice steaming hot soup such as this, soup base such as this going on, but it does tend to do it. I'm going to bring this up to a simmer. I'm going to add some bay leaves to it, I'm going to go inside. I'll get the andouille sausage that's going to go in here. I'll start prepping the okra, which is optional. You don't have to put okra in yours if you don't like it. But the way I do it, it doesn't come out slimy. And then, about 10 minutes before it's done, we'll add in the shrimp and the crab meat that goes along with it. And let that simmer for a bit. And while that's simmering for the last 10-15 minutes, we're going to steam up some crab legs. So, be back here in a few minutes with some sausage. Almost forgot. Gotta have bay leaves when you're making this stuff. Now we can go get some sausage. It's about time to stir in a little bit of Tony's Creole seasoning. Y'all know what that is. I'm sure you've seen that before. If you haven't, you need to get some. It's very good stuff. It's Tony Chasserie, whatever you call him. And stir that in real good, and then we're going to add the andouille sausage. For those of you that haven't made gumbo before, I'm not going to say this is the best gumbo to make. This is the best gumbo to do. This is the gumbo that me and the bride have been playing with for several years, and it's worked out really well for us. We've only got it tweaked the way we like it. Most every family's going to have their own gumbo recipe, or they know an aunt or an uncle or somebody that makes gumbo. So many different variants to this. Some people add chicken to it. Some people put so much cayenne pepper in there that you can't hardly eat it, and they're proud of how hot it is. I don't understand people like that. But now it's time to let this simmer. I'm going to want that liquid to reduce. I want it to go down probably about a ½ inch or so. But I'm going to bring it up to a boil first, and I'll drop it to a simmer. And the next time you guys see me, I'll be adding some okra. The okra. People say I don't like okra in my gumbo because it makes the gumbo slimy. If you take your okra and you go ahead and slice it up in the pieces you want, don't wash it first. Do not wash it first. Take the okra, brush it off if you need to get the dirt off of there, slice it up into the size slices you like, drop it in a bowl, then cover it with white vinegar and let it sit for 30 minutes. After that, then put it into a colander, rinse it really well, and you'll have you'll have least slimy okra that way. Hope that little tidbit helped. See you in a bit. Let's stir in a little okra. It's been going along. It doesn't drop down too far yet. So I took this okra and I let it simmer, or didn't let it simmer, I let it soak in white vinegar for about 30 minutes. And that should reduce the slime quite a bit. There's still going to be some. I mean, it's okra, of course, but it's not like the old days where it was really bad. You know, you remember Grandma boiling okra up, and you're like, oh no, can't handle that. But this should help some on that. A little bit of useless trivia about okra. Back in the old days, some people used to refer to the okra pieces as lady fingers. The reason for that is because they're long and slender like a lady's finger. So there's your useless trivia for the day. Going to be a while. The shadows will be much different by the time I come back next, because this needs to simmer for quite some time, and we're not going to eat until around 5 o'clock tonight. And it's only 2 o'clock now. So we're going to let that simmer, let these meld a little bit before I add the shrimp to it and the crab meat to it. I'm probably going to add some oysters to this, probably an hour or so from now. So by the time it's all said and done, the meats that we're going to have in there is going to be the andouille sausage. We're going to have shrimp, oysters, and some lump crab meat. We shall see what happens. 3 hours for me, probably about 5 seconds for you. I almost forgot a very important step in this process. Generally, I don't put in the meats other than the sausage. I don't put in the seafood until right at the end, so about 10-15 minutes before we're ready to eat. But this stuff that I pick up at the little Hispanic market that I shop at on a regular basis. What we've got in here is, this is called what they call their seafood mix. I'm not sure what they actually use it for, but inside of here it's going to be some oysters, a little bit of clams. There's always a hodgepodge, a mixture of stuff. Some super ultra high def fake crab that is interesting. This one actually has got a little bit of octopus in it today. What I do is I put this in after I get it down to the simmering portion where I want to let it go for a couple of hours, and this adds a little extra layer of flavor to it as well. This little splash guard, I'll talk about it later. That's or splatter guard. That's a lifesaver for when you need to leave your pot exposed so that it can simmer and boil down a little bit, so you can lose some of the liquid to evaporation. The reason I like this so well is that, number one, it keeps bugs and stuff out. I've also got a little clamp on here so that I can clamp it down to the side, and that keeps, in case a bird lands on it, that could happen out here on the patio. And also, it gets windy out here once in a while. Yes, the steam and stuff can come out of this. However, we get a good wind gust that come up, it can blow it off. If I'm in the house and not paying attention, I could potentially lose it. So, another little tidbit of information. The time has come to add the goodness to this thing. Putting some Texas Gulf shrimp over in the pot. Also getting some of the Texas Gulf oysters over in here as well. And some crab meat that didn't like being frozen, and it turned to sawdust. But it's going to work out just fine. Get all that stirred up. Like I said, the reason I'm putting this in about the last 10 or 15 minutes is to allow the shrimp and the oysters to just cook through. It only takes about 15 minutes. I'll bring this to a boil, and then I'll drop it back down to a simmer, and after that simmer starts, I'm going to let the timer go for about, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes. But while this is coming up, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to put the crab legs in the pot. Sorry I couldn't show you the crab legs out here. It's just don't have enough BTUs to boil the water. So next time you see me, I should have a plate of this with some crackers. While I was out on the patio finishing things up, the wife made us some baked mahi-mahi. Here's my gumbo, and it looks like it turned out great. I can't wait to try it. And then we also have some crab legs to go along with it. Appreciate y'all following along with me today, and y'all take care.